Here are 5 more easy tricks for intermediate skateboarders. Up first, we have the 360 Boneless. This one is exactly what it sounds like. You're doing a boneless and a frontside 360 at the same time. To make learning this one easier, you should probably learn a regular boneless, as well as a 180 boneless, both of which I've covered in my previous videos. For your foot positioning, you just want your front foot to be somewhere where it can easily come off the side of the board and go to the ground. And for my back foot, I like to keep it across the back of the board, pretty much right on the bolts and pocket area. So the most important part about this is just being able to take your front foot off relatively quickly so you have time to bend down and grab the side of the board with your hand. So you can start to practice this part while just standing still. Just sort of slowly go through the motions of taking your front foot off while bending down and grabbing the side of the board, and then lifting the board up along with your back foot. But the other main thing we need to focus on is getting the front side rotation with your body in the board, which means that we're going to need to incorporate our shoulders by winding them up and then unwinding as you jump, and little by little try to get more and more rotation. So you can try it a few times while standing still, and once you have the feeling, you should be able to put it all together and do a full 360. For trick number 2, we have the Fakie frontside Bigspin. For this one, you're riding Fakie and you pop the board to do a Fakie frontside 360 shove it, and your body does a Fakie frontside 180. This is a fairly standard trick, but I do think that the frontside version is a bit harder than the backside one. So if you've learned the regular ones and you think they're pretty easy, then I would suggest trying this one. Some tricks you should know first are Fakie frontside 180s and Fakie frontside shove-its. For this one, I like to put my back foot just under the back bolts, and my front foot is in the pocket pretty far onto the board rather than up on the edge of the nose, and I'll explain why that is in a few seconds. So the first thing to do is just to try to over-rotate a Fakie frontside shove-it. Now when you do this, the reason you put your foot more into the pocket is because this is going to cause the board to stay more level. Whereas if you put your foot too far onto the edge of the nose, it's going to cause the board to fly up higher and most likely flip over. So with that in mind, try some more of those over-rotated Fakie frontside shove-its, but start adding a frontside rotation with your body as well. And once again, because of the rotation of your body, you're going to want to use your shoulders to wind and unwind. So once you put these together, you can start trying while rolling, and like I've mentioned in other videos, it'll be a lot easier doing this Fakie because the momentum is going with you. So with some trial and error, and keeping your foot in the right position, hopefully you'll be able to start to spin this a little better, and then eventually put it all together and roll away. And for trick number 3, we have a Fakie Ollie body varial. For this one, you do a Fakie Ollie, and then while you're in the air, you turn your body frontside and land back on the board. Now this one could have just been a regular Ollie body varial, but I've already done a how-to on that relatively recently, so I just decided to go Fakie for fun. But if you would rather learn them regular instead, I'll put a card with a link to that video. So the only things you'll want to know before doing this one are Fakie Ollies, and just be comfortable doing body varials. The foot positioning for this trick is pretty straightforward, just set up how you would for a normal Fakie Ollie. So if you just go out and try a straight Fakie Ollie while turning your body frontside, you'll probably run into a few problems at first. And one of the main ones has to do with how you pop the board. So you basically want to make sure that when you pop the board, you're popping straight down. When doing a trick like this, where your body has to rotate in an opposite direction, you may have the tendency to accidentally cause the board to do a backside shove-it by scooping your foot. So that's definitely something that you should be focusing on. And another thing is to understand what your shoulders are doing. So unlike a normal frontside 180, you're not winding your shoulders up first and then unwinding, because you still do need to pop the board straight for the Fakie Ollie and then turn. So you need to actually pop the board first and then wait a half second before opening up your shoulders and starting the rotation of your body. And finally, it's important that you should know you don't even really need to be able to pop your Fakie Ollies too high, or even at all when you're first trying this trick. Just to get the feeling down, you can sort of barely pop your board up and just turn your body 180. And once you've done that a few times, you should be able to put it together and actually ollie into this and get the trick down. And coming up next, we have the pressure flip. Now this is another one that I've covered previously, but I think it's a really great one to learn, because if you can actually understand the pressure part of this trick, then the actual thing itself is really easy. So you don't really need to know anything first, but these little shove-its might help because the back foot movement is slightly similar. And for your foot positioning, you mainly want to focus on your back foot. I basically end up with my back foot just over and maybe a little behind my wheel. And I also have it angled slightly forward, and I end up with most of the pressure on the ball of my foot just behind my big toe. Essentially, you just want to be able to stand over that back wheel with the ball of your foot, putting as much weight into it as you can while still being able to balance. And all your front foot does is keep the board from flipping over from all that weight, and then once you jump, it just gets out of the way. So theoretically, if you're doing this right and you jump off that back foot while pushing down with all that weight, the board should end up flipping like a heel flip. So then it's to that motion that we add a little bit of a shove or a scoop that causes the board to flip around like a regular pressure flip. And also keep in mind that you're not just slamming the tail down like you would for an ollie. You're just driving all your weight down to that back toe into the side of your board and then jumping off of it. So you can go out and just start trying it while rolling, and you'll definitely know if you have the right feel if the board is flipping over. And then from there, it's just a matter of giving the board enough of a scoop so it'll also turn 180. So little by little, you can work on really pressing into that back foot in order to get the board to flip over, and then adding enough of a scoop in order to get the full rotation. And then eventually, if you put them together at the right timing, then you should be able to flip this trick around. And this is another one where if you need more help, I'll put a card with a link to my original how-to video about it. And finally, for our last trick, we have the Varial Kickflip. Now this trick is just a combination of a pop shove-it and a kickflip, and it's gotten a pretty bad rap over the years, but it's still an important trick to learn because it's most people's transition trick between kickflips and 360 flips. So the obvious tricks you should know first are pop shove-its and kickflips. For the foot positioning of this trick, you basically want to set it up like a hybrid between a pop shove-it and a kickflip, which for me just means that I move my front foot a little bit more towards the center of the board and maybe angle it just a little more for a faster flick. So for this one, you're just basically doing a kickflip, but instead of popping straight down with your back foot, you're giving the board a shoving motion to get that 180 rotation. And your front foot, while it's doing the kickflip motion, is also sort of pushing into the board to help with that backside rotation. So the best way to start learning this one is just to start kicking it around. This one is more about knowing what you're doing wrong and learning how to correct those problems. So basically, if your board is not rotating enough, then you need to add more of a shoving motion with your back foot. If your board is under flipping, then you may want to move it further down towards the center of your board and flicking a little faster. And if it's over flipping, then you'll want to do the opposite. So you can practice this one while standing still a few times, and then move it up to rolling and landing with one foot. And then once you've gotten how much you should flick and shove the board down, then you should be able to put them together and land the trick. So these were just 5 more fun tricks that I thought were worth learning that aren't too hard, but also aren't complete beginner tricks. And if you follow my series on beginner and intermediate tricks, then you've probably noticed the gradual transition from those unorthodox ones to these a bit more normal tricks. And so hopefully you've been progressing alongside, and you can add these ones to your arsenal as well. So as always, I'd like to thank my Patreon pledgers for consistently being amazing. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.